Mike Edwards here. I spend a lot of time working with groups and teams, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. And I'm going to try something new new to me, which is I'm going to do a whiteboard talk. In a moment, I'm going to bring up my iPad, and as we go, it's as if we're in a room together. So that's a bit of a new experiment for me. We'll see how that goes. So, this thing of groups and teams, what's the difference? The two words are quite frequently used interchangeably, especially in a business, a corporate kind of context. We typically call any group, division, department, whatever it is, we call them a team. But a team isn't just a group of people. A group and a team are distinctly different things. Now, before I get into this, I just want to say too, neither one of these things are good or bad. There's some extremes to the range, which do start being less than optimal. But as I'm talking, as we're working through this, please don't look at either end of the spectrum as being good or bad. It's not that groups are bad and teams are better. Each have a role, each has a purpose, and each has a context where they work best. And that's what I want to talk about. So, first off, let me just bring up here. I want to bring up my whiteboard. Now, this is my iPad and my pencil, just to be transparent here. And we'll see how this goes. So when we think of groups and teams, I want us to think about them as being on a spectrum. At one end, we have groups. Now, groups are a collection of people who are work and operate independent of each other. They may have common goals to work towards, they may have common processes, whatever it is. But person A's success is not tied directly to person B's success. Right? See what I'm saying there? They're independent of each other. Their success or failure is independent. At the other end of the spectrum, I want to talk about teams. Now, teams is not just merely a bunch of people you put in a room and say, there, you're a team, off you go. There are actually some very specific attributes, things that have to happen, things that we could observe, which tell us we have a team happening. The most important part about this is with a team, they are interdependent on each other, whereas a group is independent. So if you take nothing else away from this in terms of your language, group versus team, think about, are they independent or interdependent? So let me give you an example. If you and I are in a rowboat together, right? And, like one of those old-fashioned ones. I have a motor for my boat, so I don't do this a whole lot. Unless the motor breaks down or I run out of gas, of course. Thankfully, knock on wood, that doesn't happen much. Right? If we're in a rowboat together, we're sitting side by side, I have one oar, you have the other oar. If we are independent, if we are operating independent, despite the fact we're sitting right next to each other, if we are independent of each other, I'm going to pull at whatever power I think is right, and you're going to do the same. What do you think the result of that might be? Probably going to go in circles. If we're independent, I'm concerned about the problems in my space. So as I'm rowing away, if I look over and I see water around your feet, what's the likelihood I'm going to care about it, right? I'm going to be rowing along, and if I'm truly operating independently, I might look over and say, hey, looks like you got a bit of a problem there, right? Your problem, not mine. Of course, there's all those memes out there that the boat's sinking, and two guys at the front of the boat go, well, I'm glad I'm not in the back of the boat. Right? It's that kind of thing. Truthfully, though, using a rowboat metaphor, our fates are tied together. That's what makes us interdependent. So as a team in rowing this boat, if we can actually work together, even in terms of the power, right? How hard we're pulling. Oh, pull a little lighter. Oh, I'm going to pull a little bit harder. Whatever it is, right? We're going to accomplish our task that much sooner. Now, the task isn't this. The task is getting somewhere, right? As we're rowing. So, interdependent, we're working together, we're talking, we're collaborating. When problems like leaks show up, we work together on that problem. Independent, don't care what you're doing, right? I'm just going to do my thing. So, in a rowboat example, right, if there's two of us rowing, definitely being a team, working together to accomplish and get ourselves to our destination, works to our advantage. If we were in two different rowboats and we were having a race, let's say, right, then we are operating independent of each other. So there's a spectrum here. I hope you can see that. Groups operate independently, teams interdependently. So let's go to a couple examples here, right? When does it make sense to have a group or have a team? And the question is the work bigger than one person can accomplish? Does the work require more extensive innovation, debate, perspective taking, whatever it is, than one person can provide by themselves? If you're answering yes to those kinds of questions, you may want to go to a team. On the other end of the spectrum, the groups, there is a lot of work out there where they can succeed independently. The work is small enough that you don't need a true team. Right? Like there's different ends to the spectrum. In group, so for example, it might be a call center, right, where you have a group of people who are answering phones and servicing customers. They can't be totally independent of each other. There has to be some kind of alignment, right? Which is why I actually believe there is another line somewhere in here. And what that line represents is, in the spectrum of being in a group, when can you go too far? Right? So in other words, when you get down into this space in here, you may not actually have a group. You may have anarchy. You may have chaos. You may have people running in every direction doing their own thing. What we actually want is we want groups of people to be on the spectrum here somewhere and have some level of alignment. So for example, one executive team I did some work with, they all had individual objectives, incentives, and so on. So by definition, they're not tied together. Their fates are not tied together strongly like they would in a team end of the spectrum. And so for that group, they may actually fall somewhere in the middle here. Actually, sorry, when we started over here. And what we wanted to do was move them somewhere along here. So they still had individual objectives, goals, and so on, right? So they were still somewhat of a group, but we wanted more alignment, more integration between them, and more behaviors that lean towards the tendency of being a team. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum, the team thing here, right? The most common thing I bump into are things like software teams. They're building some big product, right? Some application, some product with back-end stuff and front-end stuff and all kinds of stuff involved. And so the work of doing that is way too complex for one person to accomplish. It's bigger than one person. So that group has to come together to achieve that bigger outcome. So they want to be somewhere over here on this end of the spectrum, right? They want to operate more interdependently, which means their fates are tied together. They're going to succeed or fail as a team. Now, I do know lots of software teams where how they're actually behaving is like a group. And it shows in the outcomes because they're not working interdependently together. Now you notice I also put a line over here to say on the far right side to say there's a range of teams where you actually do cross a line, right? Where you come together too tight knit. One of the most common dysfunctions I see is when we start referring to and behaving like our team is family, right? We're all in this together. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to cause harm to anyone. We certainly don't want anybody to quit because, oh my God, we're family, right? That's a problem. There's a time and a place for that. But true teams know that some people may not be a fit. They may not want to be there. They may not want to be a part of this or any team. And that's not a bad thing. But if we treat them like family and we try to hold on to them at all costs, it's actually quite detrimental. So we want to be conscious of not crossing that line and going too far. So, all of this, right, this spectrum of groups or teams, where is your group right now? Are they on the left side? Are they behaving like a group? Or are they on the right side? Are they behaving like a team? Whatever the answer, remember, it's neither good nor bad. The question is, what's going to be the best way for them to accomplish the outcomes they want? By working together to accomplish something that's bigger than any one of them? Or by working independently and in parallel? Not good, not bad. Make it a conscious choice. Now, if you want them to be a team, right, to move to the right, to move towards the team end of this spectrum, there's actually 5 conversations they need to have in order to become a team or start behaving like a team. You know, you could argue, because we all talk about this, right? We want a high-performing team. We could say they're over here, so let's just get them over there, and then, whew, we're done. It's not a destination. It's a journey. It's about behaviors. It's about doing the right things, having the right conversations that keep us aligned as teams. Now, most of us try to do team building by hosting things like social functions, or going to an escape room, or learning to cook together. Whatever it is, we do something to try to connect. That comes out of like 20, 30 years ago, right? And from that 20, 30 years ago, people saw a need, and then consultants rushed in to make money and sold them team development, team building events, right? Take them off for a day and they do all kinds of fun and challenging activities to force them to operate like a team. Here's what I know. You cannot build a team by doing social activities. The conversations needed to create the alignment, to create the integration, are not going to happen at a social event. Instead, you need to have these 5 conversations. Number one. Oh, let me switch my color here. Not a big red person if I don't have to, except for highlighting. Number one, you need to talk about what's the team's task. They're a team because they need to do X, right? This isn't the big vision, goal, whatever kind of thing. Because here's the thing. A lot of times managers say, here's my vision, here's my big goal. That's a manager's goal. Quite often teams don't connect with that. And we immediately create a disconnect between those two things. So that's number one, task. Number two is to start talking about team member motivations. Right? Why are you here? What's in it for you? What's in it for you to be a part of this team? When team members can start to understand that, they support each other and help each other through some challenging times. They also start to understand why, well, this person is not engaging in this type of work, this person is. Why is this person, going the extra mile and this person's doing just enough? None of it's good or bad. But if we can understand why people are motivated, we can get to the end result we want, which is team. Teams will look after themselves. They will trust each other. They will make fewer assumptions about why you're doing what you're doing. Right? That's a source of conflict in a lot of teams. So that's the second one, motivation. The third one is to create agreements. Now here's the thing about agreements. I've seen lots of teams or managers create agreements. It's even worse when a manager creates the agreements and gives them to the team. I've seen teams though do this too, where they sit down for an hour and they say, all right, so what agreements do we want? They do brainstorming. They do good things in terms of facilitating. And what they do is they walk away an hour later with a list of things like, we will respect each other. We will assume positive intent. Whatever it is. It's all good stuff, right? I can't argue with those types of things. However, what do they mean? How do you know you have it? What if it isn't there? How would we know it? And what are we going to do about it? The thing is with agreements, right? That when you have agreements, that's what creates trust. Not by having them, but by keeping them, right? Also, things are going to fall apart. They're not going to keep their agreement. It's how they respond to that, right? If they can work as a team to say, hey, we did not honor this agreement, then that will also help to build trust. So there's the first three things. First one is they have to get aligned. What's the task we're undertaking? The second one is they have to integrate themselves as people, right? Understand motivations. The third one being creating agreements between them. That allows for expansion, right? That they can start to build on the behaviors that will allow them to become a high-performing team. There's two more. I said 5. The fourth conversation is about setting clear and elevating goals. Now, clear, because there is no measurement required. We can look at it and go, yep, attained it. So, John F. Kennedy, back in the early 60s, made that famous speech that probably most of us have heard. We choose to go to the moon by the end of the decade and return men safely to Earth. Whatever exactly his words were. Very clear and very elevating, right? It rallied an entire country, if not more, to achieving that goal. So, clear and elevating goals. Now, here's the thing about clear and elevating goals. Quite often, managers want to set them. Give them the task. Let the clear and elevating goals emerge. And where it quite often emerges is out of chaos, right? If you believe in the Tuckman model, forming, storming, norming, performing, it's when they're coming out of storming and starting into norming. That's where those clear and elevating goals start to emerge. And the fifth one which truly could happen anywhere, is to inventory resources and honor them, honor differences. Right? What that's saying is the team sits down to say, all right, what skills do we have? What do we bring to the table today? Some of them may have worked with each other in the past. That doesn't mean the skills are the same. It also could be somebody might have a skill they no longer want to use. Once upon a time, I used to be a project manager. Spent 15 years doing it. I have the skills still, right? Yeah, they're a little rusty. I haven't used them for years. I still have the skills, and it's not something I want to bring to the table. So the conversation needs to be safe enough so that people can say things like that. So, 5 conversations. First 3 being the most important, right? First one being alignment. What's the task? The second one being integrating. Motivation. What's motivated? What's in it for you to be a part of the team? Agreements, right? We create agreements about the behaviors we want to exhibit with each other. Number 4, clear and elevating goals, right? That thing that emerges that really causes us to go further. And then 5, we inventory our resources and honor the differences. 5 conversations that help teams, groups of people, move along the spectrum into the team side of it. So, teams, groups, it's a spectrum. It's not good or bad. Be conscious about it. What's needed here? How do we get them there? Thank you so much for watching us. I'm going to be watching it myself shortly to see how this whole whiteboard experiment worked. Have a great day. I look forward to talking to you again soon.